Hello, and welcome to Perspectives on Faith on Ebru TV. I'm your host, Amir Hussain. Our guest today is Dr. Nelly Van-Doorn-Harder, who is Pathology Chair in World Religions and Ethics at Valparaiso University in Indiana. Greetings. Professor Van-Doorn-Harder, could you tell us a little bit about Valparaiso and the kinds of courses that you teach?
Yeah. Valparaiso University is a Lutheran university originally, so it has a Christian background, and that means there's a great interest in religion, and it has a history of teaching other religions than Christianity. It's teaching Buddhism, Hinduism, and Islam. And apart from that, we have a lot of Muslim students, students from all over the world, who come especially to our School for Engineering, and we have an MBA in International Business. And so it is very interesting to teach in such a school, because you can teach religion and discuss religion, and you have students who are religious and of different religions themselves. And we teach right now quite a wide spectrum of courses, ranging from introduction to Islam, ABC, what is Islam, history of Islam. A lot of people have no idea when they come, out of high school in America. They have no idea about the history and of what Muslims really believe, and that kind of information we try to relay in these classes. But we have also a lot of classes that are more interesting for students who are themselves Muslim. For example, Muslim-Christian relations. And you know that because we use your book, Oil and Water, in that class. And the students love to read that book and discuss, what are the crossing points between Islam and Christianity, and where are the differences. And we have classes on conflict resolution, and especially religious conflict, and that is not just only Islam, but that is many types of religious conflict, because we know there's religious conflict in very many parts of the world. So students study the source of the conflict, the roots of the conflict, and then what do people do? What do people do to get out of it? Right. How do they mediate, make peace? And then we look at really projects from all over the world. We look at, for example, Gandhi is always big, but we look at projects from Indonesia, where we just had big conflicts after the fall of President Suharto in 1998. And we look, for example, Egypt, where you have Christians and Muslims, and sometimes things occur, and then people find ways again to get back to peaceful ways of living, just to teach our students that there's always a way out, if people are willing to work together and be together. And that is at this moment. There's one course I have to mention to you, Women in the Religions of Abraham, where we talk about women in Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. And
it's wonderful that you do that in comparison. It's not just women in Islam, but women in Christianity, women in Judaism.
No, because we want to open the students' minds for the similarities, the many possible approaches, and not just because we know there is so much about Islam that people think, women are suppressed, and Muslim women have no agency, they are locked up. Right. And so you want to show them, first of all, that this happens in more than one religion, and also you want to show them that women in all kinds of religious situations find ways to overcome their own situation, and that religions are not as strict, as enclosed and repressive as they sometimes look from the outside.
So wonderful. I've been privileged to know you for several years, particularly with our work on the Study of Islam section of the American Academy of Religion. But can you tell us a little bit about your background? How did you come to be a scholar who specializes in not just religion, but in Islam?
Right. Well, that was really a little bit by accident, because I'm originally from the Netherlands. And as I grew up, I never met anybody of any other religion than Dutch Protestants. You know, a little bit Catholics. So that was
Catholics
it.
were the other. Yeah.
Catholics were the other to us. And so I really never considered studying Islam, but I wanted to become a psychiatrist. And I was very interested in other cultures, so I wanted to become a cross-cultural psychiatrist. But I'm from a year after the Second World War, you know, a few years after the World War, there's many, many children. And in the Netherlands, that means there is kind of a lottery for a place in the university. Unless you're straight A+, I was A-. There wasn't enough, only A+ comes in, gets a place directly in medicine, and the rest then has to wait according to the place assigned to you by the lottery. And that was a long time. It was like 3 years I had to wait, which is eternity when you're 18.
A young person, yeah,
and so I thought, you know, I want to do cross-cultural studies. Why don't I study Islam and Middle Eastern studies? So then I have that knowledge when my place, when medicine comes. And then I started to study, and I found it so interesting and so exciting. That I kept doing it. I never went to medicine. When my place came for medicine, I gave it up.
So what kinds of material did you study with regard to Islam? How did you start to get interested? Because I know now you're an expert on Islam in Indonesia, but you've done earlier work on women in Egypt, Coptic women, those kinds of things. But maybe can you give us a little sense of your background in terms of the education with regard to Islam and how you got interested in these kinds of things?
Right. Well, our education was extremely traditional. It was very, very traditional. You basically had to read a lot of classical Arabic text. And a text that I later on found out that a lot of people whose language is Arabic can't read them. They can't read those texts, you know. We had to learn to read them. And and then you learned the history of the Middle East. You studied the history of the Middle East, and you didn't really look at Islam as a religion. And I found that very unsatisfactory. I felt something is missing. And later on I could give it a name. I thought, I'm much more of an anthropologist or a social scientist. I'm much more interested in what, you know, what do people believe? What do they do with that belief? And how does it move them through life? And so as I went on in my studies, I added more, you know, from the other sciences. I started to do more religious studies, more anthropology. And I went from studying text to studying, you know, real life. So doing field work, and that is how I came to study Christians in Egypt. I was in Egypt, and I was there in charge of a refugee agency. And a lot of my refugees, half were Muslims, and the other half were Christians. And for the Muslims, I made a network with the mosques, with the local mosques, where, you know, because when you are a refugee, your greatest need is spiritual help, counseling. People who listen to your story, who take you seriously, and who give you a space to express your grief, your loss, and who say, yes, I understand your suffering. And a lot of these refugees came from Somalia and from Ethiopia. And so they were mixed. And so I set up a network for the Muslims with different mosques and different imams, and, you know, where they could go and feel at home and where they could pray. And I also set up a network for the Christians. And most of the Christians were Orthodox. And that's how I discovered that there were a lot of Christians in Egypt. I had no idea. And to get to know these Christians, you need to know Arabic. They speak Arabic. They don't speak, and, you know, they are Egyptians. And so that's how my first study was on the Christian culture of Egypt. And I did a lot of field work for that. I would go and interview people and observe rituals and, you know, stay in monasteries and